Hello and welcome to this e-training video. We're going to be looking at a site selection scenario using the Spatial modeler. And this is actually part 3 of the series of e-training videos on site selection using Spatial modeler. In the previous 2 episodes we actually performed the site selection itself, looking for locations that were within 150 meters of water, built in forested areas and on gentle slopes. And in those videos we created a model that basically identified the raster locations where those criteria are true. I created an output raster file, I displayed it, and I set attributes like color and opacity on that dataset manually after it had been created. What we want to do here actually is show you how to do that as part of your spatial model, so it's applied automatically to the datasets that you're creating. Makes it much more streamlined and straightforward and standardized in terms of your processing. So I'm going to show you how to do that within the spatial model editor. So here's the site selection basic model that we'd created in the earlier videos, basically bringing in a land cover classification to check for the water criteria and the forest criteria, and then a digital elevation model looking for shallow slopes, gently undulating ground. That basically produced us a binary output of is suitable or isn't suitable. We're going to go ahead and double click my raster output because I do not want to override my existing data. I'm going to give this a new output name, barracks attributed. We still want it to be 1-bit thematic. Go ahead and OK that. And let's go ahead and save the new model. Now what we want to do here is start to add attributes to this raster output. So to do that we need the custom table input. So we're going to define a table of what the attributes contain, and we need one table per type of attribute, or per attribute field I should say, that's going to be added. So we're going to search on table and we want the custom table input. Find that and drag it into our model and drop it onto the canvas like that. So if we go ahead and double click on our custom table input, it'll bring up a dialog of the table source. And if you remember, we're producing a binary output in this case, so there's going to only be 2 classes, isn't a suitable location or is. So we need a table of size 2. And the first thing we're going to define are the class colors to use. So I'm going to change the data type to color. I'm going to OK this, that yes, the numeric values are going to become color patches instead. And we're going to go ahead, we can leave the background as black, but we're going to go ahead and right click in the class 1 or row 1 color patch and pick a nice bright color. Let's pick magenta. We could pick from the color wheel if we wanted, using the other option, but I'm going to go ahead and just select magenta from the menu. Go ahead and click OK. Now, as I say, we're going to create several attribute fields here, so it's good to keep track of how you're doing this. So let's right click on the operator. What we can do is rename that operator. So rather than custom table input, we can say that this is the color table input. So just rename that. Doesn't change the function of what this operator does, it just changes the display name. Helps us keep track of what we're doing in our spatial model. Now this operator basically just creates a table. We haven't created any actual attribute fields. We actually want to create attribute columns in our raster output stream. So let's actually find the create columns operator and drag that into our spatial model. I'm just going to use the box select to select these 2 operators and move them out a bit, so we've got room. Perhaps reposition my model using the middle mouse button to pan. And what we want to do now is connect our table up to the create columns. It's going to take one attribute, one table and create an attribute column in an attribute database that we can then connect to our raster output. So in this case, we don't have any attribute table coming in already. We're just going to create a new one. So our table values are going to be connected to the attribute values 1 port. I'm going to double click on the attribute name. I'm going to call this name the attribute field. The attribute column is going to be called color. Using these values on layer 1. So select the operator, and in the properties panel, let's just drag this out a little bit. We want the layer number is going to be layer 1. We only have one layer output. Don't actually need to specify it, but it's useful to do so. And the table type, if we double click on the port, actually needs to be a color attribute type in that database. So we've basically created now, or this operator will create it once it runs, an attribute table at the moment with just one column in it called color, containing colors. Next, we want to add another attribute field that is going to hold the class names. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to create another table. So I'm going to select the existing color table, Control C to copy it, Control V to paste in another one of those table types. Double click it. In this instance, we already have, because we copied the existing one, it's already set to a size of 2. But in this instance, we want a string table. Yep, get rid of the colors. What we want to do is say, okay, this is going to be a background class, class 0, and barracks locations for row 1 or class 1. And click OK. And again, keep track of this, right click on it and rename. So in this case, it's going to be called class names. That's now unique, so I don't need the number 2. So these are the class names table. Now, rather than adding another create column, the create columns, you notice the plural S on the operator. This is a expandable operator type. So select it and right click and select the option to add a port, or in this case it will add a series of additional ports to let us feed in a second attribute table. So like we did for the first table, we're going to connect these up and define the values, define the attribute fields. So our class names are going to go into attribute values 2. The attribute name is going to be class names, the field that gets created. Layer number again is going to be layer number 1. And in this case, the table type is a string. So we now have 2 attribute fields defined. Similarly, we want to control the opacity of the colors that we've added. So we're going to add that as an attribute as well. Again, Control C and Control V to make a copy. Double click this particular table, and we're going to change this to a float. So opacity is defined in terms of opacity from 0 to 1. So we want the background color to be transparent, not solid, so we'll leave that opacity 0. But we want the barracks color to be opaque, so we're going to make it opacity 1. That's a float value. Click OK. Right click, rename. This is the opacity table. So we can see that on there. Again, select create column, right click, add another port, do the same as we did before, hook this up. Call it opacity, so it's automatically recognized by a raster layer. Layer number is layer 1 again. And table type in this instance is float. Okay. There we have all our attributes defined. Finally, we want to attach these attributes to the raster stream and send that into the raster output operator. So we need to find the attach attributes operator, drag that in. What we're going to do is feed the attribute tables into the attribute port, and we need a raster stream to attach the attributes to. So we're going to disconnect our logical AND from the raster output and feed that raster stream into the attach attributes, so our attribute values are getting attached to that stream of raster information. dn value 0 will be associated with row 0, dn value 1 with row 1, and so on. So we now take that raster out and connect it to the raster import of our output operator, and basically we're done. Let's go ahead and save our model, save the changes that we've done, and then on Spatial Modeler tab, execute group, click run. So let's review what we've created. Go to the Home tab, Add View, create a new 2D view. On our recent list, I have my land cover database that is the basis of my model, and we're going to display over the top. If you remember, we renamed to barracks attributed our raster output. So let's go ahead and drape that over the top, barracks attributed. You can zoom in and see those locations. So you can see this time our new file immediately has the correct color. The background is opaque. If I turn that layer on and off, you can see. And if we come over here and go to the Table tab, Show Attributes, you can see that information has been automatically added in. If we expand it in the table of contents, again you can also see background and barracks are the attribute class names that are associated with this data. So that's a quick and easy way showing you how to attach attributes in a standard fashion to your raster output thematic information, as well as obviously performing the site selection basic operation. So thank you very much for watching.